All right, so here's number 6. If you want to go for it, Chris, I know that you had
Yeah,
some.
we are for leftist unity, and we do endorse independent leftists. Um, a couple examples in the graphics. We invite activists and candidates that share our values to join the Green movement, but we don't require it, and we're happy to work in coalitions. We're not non-sectarian. We're not non-campus. I would actually say that the Green, in addition to all the other things we've said about the Green Party is probably the largest non-sectarian organization in the United States. Yeah, I guess maybe the largest left, but a lot of other parties, like PSL, have a very narrow, they're they're Marxist Leninists, right? For the most part, socialist alternative are mostly Trotskyites. Whereas in my time with the Green Party, I work closely with Garrett, who comes very much from a Bookchin communalist background. I come from a more bottom left anarcho-communist, but very based in Marxism background. And one of my main mentors and best friends of the party is a lifelong Marxist Leninist, and we all work together, and we all it doesn't exist in a lot of places. And I've been involved in a lot of left organizations from the local to the national level, and the Green Party is one of the few non-sectarian organizing spaces that I've found to survive. So during the presidential campaign in 2020, we were endorsed by the Socialist Party, which Howie had been a member of since the 60s, since before the splits and everything that has happened since. We were endorsed by Legal Marijuana Now. We were endorsed by student debt organizations. We were endorsed by what's the name of the workers group? The Independent Socialist Group, which is based out of Massachusetts. We were endorsed by DSA locals, who got a lot of heat for bucking the DSA party line, which was silent support for Biden. That was de facto their position. But there were a number of locals that bucked that, and they endorsed Howie in the only socialist campaign on the ballot. So we've had that. We engaged in that in 2020. In 2022, the Green Party of California collaborated with the Peace and Freedom Party to put up a unity slate, where different members of different parties filled different positions on the slate. And part of that is dealing with California's top two electoral system, where it's an open primary and the top two people advance. So in that system, it makes even less sense than a non-top two for Greens and Peace and Freedom to run against each other, right? Because they're literally only two people can advance. So they collaborated and came up with a joint slate. And we're seeing this grow, right? Where I know on my local level, I've always worked with other leftist organizations. I know in Allegheny County, where Garrett's at, Green candidates get Sunrise and DSA endorsements, right? So,
yeah, one of our state representative candidates actually just got a Sunrise endorsement. So
those kind of collab. I will say just real quick, because I saw it. Brewers Pilot said, very interesting that some DSA members endorse Howie. Hawkins just recently, as a DSA organizer, was telling me how he was happy the Democrat Party prevents the Green Party from ballots. So first off, Brewers, you should make sure that person knows they are actively anti-democratic. They don't believe in democracy, right? And that's the position of the Democratic Party. And it's happening. That person made that statement at a time that the Democrats are trying to champion themselves as the only people fighting for democracy, when in reality they're one of democracy's biggest enemies, right? I live in Illinois, where we've been Democratic controlled for a long time. Who wrote the laws that say I have to collect 22 times as many signatures to run for Congress as a Democrat or a Republican? The Democrats wrote those laws, and the Republicans co-signed them, right? But despite these problems on the kind of macro level, the big picture national level, where I don't think we're going to see DSA buck from the Democratic Party for a while. New York DSA just rejected it. The youth caucus of the DSA just endorsed it. They endorsed a dirty break. But on the national level, it's much harder to get movement, right? A whole lot harder to get movement. But on the local level, that's where we see these kind of endorsements happen, right? I know North Carolina also has a number of DSA endorsements for people like Matthew Ho and Joshua Bradley, who's running for Raleigh City Council, right? So these endorsements they happen best at this moment in the political climate at the local level, where we're working together on issues, where we're working with each other in the movements, right? And when you're working with each other in the movement, and then someone from another coalition member runs for state house or runs for city council, it only makes sense because you work with each other, you have the relationship, right? And those local organizations of DSA, of Sunrise, are not as, clamped down and controlled by mainstream Democratic activists like their national organizations are. And so, in terms of building left unity with that, those kind of groups, which are, traditionally Democratic front groups, we've got to start at the bottom, start building those relationships. And as they're endorsing us and we're winning, and we're endorsing them and they're winning, although that doesn't usually happen with DSA because they almost always run as Democrats, right? And we don't endorse Democrats. But as those relationships build, it becomes a lot harder for the national level to keep their grip and to keep pushing back against independent politics. So I think the hope for left unity has to start bottom up, just like the hope most of the things we're talking about. The hope starts bottom up. Otherwise, we're just trading one master for another.
Yeah, agreed. So Greens very regularly seek out coalitions and endorsements from all these groups, like we were mentioning. A lot of Green candidates end up endorsed by the local DSA chapter or the local Socialist Alternative or PSL or something like
Sierra
that.
Club.
Sierra Clubs. It really varies a lot because, as Chris was saying, a lot of the groups are nationally kind of aligned with and co-opted by the Democratic Party, but the local groups will oftentimes kind of buck. Right, they'll have enough autonomy to kind of be like, no, we're gonna work with an independent candidate, we're gonna work with a Green candidate. So it does happen, but it depends a lot on what city or state you're talking about, of course, as to which chapter is more open to it or not.
We dive really deep into this when we get into our organizing workshops, right?
Yeah.
But I think really one of the key things isn't so much their autonomy, but the relationship, right?
True.
When a Green that's been involved in coalitions, that's involved in movements with these organizations runs, they know him. They say Garrett's legit, right? I know Garrett's politics. It's not, I trust Garrett when he says things.
Yeah.
And they'll back him. Whereas when we're talking the national level, they don't know you. You're just another politician spouting words. And in politics, in life in general, but in politics especially, words ain't shit, right? Platforms don't mean anything. And without that trust and that relationship, it's hard to build that kind of left unity. And it's hard to convince them to buck those that have a lot of power, like the Democrats.
Yeah,
but on the local level, that trust is kind of your I don't know, your skeleton key that opens the door, right? That lets you get through to that. So,
to give an example of that, the state representative candidate I mentioned earlier in Pennsylvania, who was recently endorsed by Sunrise, part of the reason she was endorsed is because she's a working class nurse that's been very active in Medicare for All and Green New Deal organizing. So they know her and they trust her. So it wasn't hard at all for them to say we endorse her. So,
and the reality is they probably don't know and don't trust the Democrat running for the same position.
No,
right? I know when I see, whenever my state house or state rep or whatever is around, it's all about politicking and glad handing, right? It's not an honest relationship. It's not an honest engagement. It's all superficial and it's all about electoralism. So when it comes down to it, they know it's someone they know and trust versus someone they don't know and don't trust.